They were the worst behaved class in the whole school. Then Miss Nelson said in a nice, sweet voice,
"Now settle down."
but the class would not settle down. They whispered and giggled. They squirmed and made faces. They were even rude during story hour. They always refused to do their lessons. Finally, Miss Nelson said,
"Something will have to be done."
the next morning, Miss Nelson did not come to school. So the kids said, they began to make more spitballs and more paper airplanes. Finally, they said today, let's be terrible. Suddenly, an unpleasant voice came in and said,
"Oh no, not so fast."
a woman in an ugly black dress stood before them. She said, and she hit her hand with that ruler. And the kid said, and then she demanded them to open those math books.
Stand up here.
Miss Nelson's kids did what they were told. They could see that Miss Swamp was a real witch. She meant business. Right away, she put them to work and loaded them down with homework.
That's it? That's it? No funny reality.
She said, sit perfectly still, and if you misbehave.
Don't be sorry.
Days went by and there was no sign of Miss Nelson. The kids really missed her. Maybe we should try and find her, they said. Some of them went to the police.
Hi, police.
There were 3 police officers that came and helped. They looked hard. They tried to find her. So, Detective McSmog was assigned to the case. He listened to her story and he scratched his chin and then he said,
I think Miss Nelson is missing.
Detective McSmog would not be much help. Other kids went to Miss Nelson's house. The shades were tightly drawn and no one answered. In fact, the only person they did see was the wicked Miss Viola Swamp walking up the street. They said if she sees us, she'll give us more homework. The kids got away just in time. Maybe something terrible happened to Miss Nelson. One of the kids thought maybe she was gobbled up by a huge shark.
Abby! Oh, Abby,
Good job.
But that didn't seem very likely. Maybe Miss Nelson went to Mars. But that didn't seem likely either. I know, exclaimed one know-it-all. Maybe Miss Nelson's car was carried off by a swarm of angry butterflies. But that was least likely of all. The kids in room 207 became very discouraged. It seemed that Miss Nelson was never coming back, and they would be stuck with Miss Viola Swamp forever. They heard footsteps in the hall, And the kids whispered. Someone in a sweet voice said,
Hello, children.
it was,
Miss Nelson.
and she asked them,
Did you miss me?
and the kids cried,
Oh, yes.
and they asked her.
Where were you?
Miss Nelson said,
That's my little secret. How about a story hour?
and the kids cried.
Oh, yes.
Miss Nelson noticed that during story hour, no one was rude or silly. She asked,
Why?
and the kids said,
That's our little secret.
back home, Miss Nelson took off her coat and hung it in the closet right next to an ugly black dress. When it was time for bed, she sang a little song.
I'll never tell.
She said to herself with a smile. P.S. Detective McSmog is working on a new case. He is now looking for Miss Viola Swanson. The end.